Embarrassment averted, heart captured, how one heroic moment changed everything. The space between strangers and soulmates, that's where our stories live. Welcome back to Dear Love Diaries, where every heartbeat has a voice. Feel that? That gentle tug at your spirit when truth resonates? That's our connection, living, breathing, growing with each story we share. Your return to this sanctuary isn't a coincidence, it's a continuation. Each of you leaves fingerprints on these narratives, your insights in comments, your silent nods of understanding, your collective energy transforming digital space into something sacred. For our first-timers, raise your hand in the comments, and our faithful souls who never miss an episode, you've just entered a space where strangers become family through the stories we share. So dim the lights. Silence the noise. Let the world fall away as we turn another page from lives lived in pursuit of connection. Today's story reminded me why I began collecting these confessions, because love arrives unannounced, often disguised as ordinary moments until we recognize them as extraordinary. Shall we begin? Naomi Jackson woke up at exactly 5 a.m. on the day of the Wellington Charity Gala, not that she'd slept much anyway. Her dreams had been filled with toppling ice sculptures and missing centerpieces. By 5:03, she was already reviewing her color-coded checklist for the fourth time that week. Everything has its place, and everything in its place, she whispered to herself, a mantra inherited from her grandmother who had raised her to believe that excellence wasn't just expected, it was the bare minimum. At 32, Naomi had built her event planning business, Flawless Affairs, from nothing but determination and an eye for detail that bordered on supernatural. In an industry dominated by well-connected socialites with family money, being a black woman who had worked her way up from assisting at hotel conferences meant every event had to be twice as impressive to receive half the recognition. The Wellington Gala wasn't just another event. It represented everything she'd been working toward for the past decade. Success tonight meant potential contracts with the city's top philanthropists. Failure meant watching her competitors, particularly Brooke Sullivan, who had family connections to spare, sweep up the clients she had worked so hard to impress. "You've triple-checked everything," her brother Andre's voice came through her earpiece as she surveyed the ballroom hours before guests would arrive. "The flowers are perfect, the lighting is exactly as requested, and the chef is actually smiling. That's practically a miracle." "I need to quadruple-check," Naomi replied, adjusting a place card that was perhaps 1 millimeter off-center. "Margaret Wellington is bringing the Harrington Foundation board members tonight. If they sign with me for their annual series, that's 6 guaranteed major events next year. And if one fork is out of place, they'll immediately run to Brooke's company instead?" Andre's voice held gentle teasing. "You laugh, but you know how this industry works," Naomi sighed, moving to inspect the bar setup. "One mistake can haunt you for years." What Naomi didn't say was how tired she was of being perfect all the time. Of the nights spent alone with spreadsheets instead of on dates. Of the constant pressure to be twice as prepared, twice as professional, twice as perfect as her competitors. Across town, Lucas Bennett was reviewing architectural plans in his corner office when his mother called. "Please tell me you're not canceling tonight," Rebecca's voice held both warmth and gentle reproach. The Wellington Gala is the networking he had helped reshape with his award-winning designs. At 36, he had achieved everything his father had dreamed for him before passing away when Luke opportunity of the season. Lucas rubbed his temples, looking out at the city skyline as was just 15. "I'll be there," he promised. "Though you know how I feel about these events. All surface, no substance," Rebecca finished for him. "I know, dear. But not everyone is putting on a show. Sometimes genuine connections happen in unexpected places." Lucas didn't mention how rarely that seemed to be true in his experience. How exhausting it was to be the reliable one, the steady one, the one who never faltered. The architect everyone trusted with their vision but no one really knew. As evening approached, Naomi changed into her carefully selected black gown, professional but elegant, designed to help her blend into the background while remaining accessible to clients. The perfect event planner, present when needed, invisible when not. Lucas donned his tailored suit with the practiced efficiency of someone who attended too many formal events. His mother had taught him that appearance matters, but his father had taught him that character matters more. He wondered what his father would think of the life he'd built, successful by every measurable standard but somehow lacking in ways he couldn't quite define. By 7 o'clock, guests began arriving at the historic Hamilton Hotel ballroom. Naomi stationed herself near the entrance, tablet in hand, watching her vision come to life as Seattle's wealthiest and most influential citizens flowed through the doors. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The string quartet played at precisely the right volume. The lighting made everyone look 10 years younger. The champagne was perfectly chilled. But as any event planner knows, it's when everything seems perfect that you should start to worry. To understand why this night would change everything for Naomi and Lucas, we need to understand who they were before their paths crossed. Naomi Jackson had grown up watching her mother clean other people's houses, coming home with aching feet but never complaining. Her father had left when she was 3, a fact her grandmother would refer to as his loss whenever Naomi asked about him. Between her mother's long hours and her grandmother's unwavering standards, Naomi learned early that excellence was the only acceptable outcome. "Good enough isn't good enough, child," her grandmother would say as she made Naomi redo her homework if the handwriting wasn't perfect. "This world won't give you second chances." When Naomi earned a full scholarship to college, the first in her family to attend, her mother had cried with pride. But that pride came with pressure. Every A- felt like failure. Every accomplishment just raised expectations for the next. After graduation, Naomi had started as an assistant at a hotel events department, watching how the wealthy celebrated their milestones. She noticed the details others missed, how lighting changed moods, how table arrangements facilitated conversation, how the right music at the right moment could transform an ordinary gathering into a memorable experience. At night, she took business classes online. During lunch breaks, she designed event concepts. And when she finally launched Flawless Affairs 4 years ago, she poured every penny of her savings into creating the perfect website, the perfect business cards, the perfect first impression. What she hadn't realized was how lonely perfection could be. Her last relationship had ended a year ago, with her boyfriend saying, "I feel like I'm dating your calendar, not you." Her closest friend was her brother Andre, who worked as her assistant when he wasn't pursuing his music career. Andre was the only one who saw behind her flawless facade. Who knew she still ate peanut butter straight from the jar at 2 a.m., who had held her when she cried after losing her first major client to Brooke Sullivan, who reminded her that being human wasn't the same as being flawed. Lucas Bennett's story began differently but led to a similar place of isolation. His father, a respected structural engineer, had died of a sudden heart attack when Lucas was 15, leaving his mother to raise him alone. The last conversation he'd had with his father was about college applications, about the importance of building something that would outlast you. The responsibility of being his mother's rock, of fulfilling his father's dreams, had transformed Lucas from a carefree teenager into a serious young man overnight. He'd graduated at the top of his class, earned his architecture degree with honors, and steadily built a reputation for reliability and vision. By 36, his firm had designed some of Seattle's most innovative buildings. His work was praised for finding the perfect balance between function and beauty, between tradition and innovation. What few people realized was how much Lucas had come to resemble his buildings, structurally sound but somehow empty inside. His mother, Rebecca, had rebuilt her life after widowhood, finding joy in community service and, eventually, a second marriage to a kind professor. She worried that her son had never allowed himself the same opportunity to rebuild after loss, that he had simply constructed a perfect facade and called it living. "You design these beautiful spaces for other people to fill with life," she had told him recently, "but your own home echoes with emptiness." Lucas had dated occasionally but always found himself drawn to women who needed something: financial stability, emotional support, professional connections. He was good at being needed. He wasn't sure he knew how to simply be wanted. Then there was Brooke Sullivan, whose path had crossed with Naomi's years earlier when they'd both worked for the same event company. Born into a family with social connections and old money, Brooke had initially befriended Naomi, seemingly admiring her attention to detail and work ethic. When Naomi had confided her dream of starting her own company, Brooke had been supportive, right until she launched her own competing business 6 months before Naomi was ready, using the very concepts they had discussed over late-night planning sessions. "It's just business," Brooke had said with a shrug when confronted. "You should have moved faster." The betrayal had taught Naomi a painful lesson about trust. Now they circled each other at industry events with practiced smiles that never reached their eyes, competing for the same elite clientele. The final key player in tonight's unfolding drama was Margaret Wellington herself. Philanthropist, tastemaker, and gatekeeper to Seattle's most exclusive circles. At 70, she had built her late husband's modest family foundation into a powerhouse of charitable giving. Her annual gala wasn't just an event, it was an institution. And tonight, she was bringing the board members of the Harrington Foundation, potential clients who could secure Naomi's business future or destroy it with a single unfavorable impression. As the gala reached its midpoint, these lives were about to intersect in ways none of them could have anticipated. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the moment that would change everything was drawing near. If you've ever felt that pressure to be perfect in your professional life, or know someone who has, hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Chapter 2. The Wellington Gala was in full swing, the ballroom humming with conversation and laughter. Naomi moved through the crowd like a quiet conductor, her eyes constantly scanning for any hint of discord in her carefully orchestrated symphony. "The silent auction is exceeding projections," Andre murmured as he passed her, tablet in hand. "We're already 20% above last year's totals." Naomi allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Perfect timing. Margaret just texted that she's bringing the Harrington board members in now. They're coming directly from another meeting. That's when she noticed Brooke Sullivan approaching one of the waitstaff near the entrance, the same entrance where Margaret Wellington would be arriving with the potential clients who could make or break Flawless Affair's future. Something in Brooke's body language set off alarm bells. The casual touch on the waiter's arm. The whispered comment that made him look momentarily confused. The subtle glance in Naomi's direction to ensure she was watching. "Andre," Naomi said quietly into her headset, "can you check on the waitstaff by the east entrance? Something's off." But Andre had been pulled away by a question about the silent auction, his headset temporarily removed. Naomi took a step toward the entrance, but was intercepted by the catering manager with an urgent question about the timing of the dessert service. 5 minutes, she assured him, trying to keep her eyes on the entrance. Stick to the timeline. By the time she extricated herself, Margaret Wellington was already making her entrance. The elderly philanthropist moved with surprising grace for her 70 years, elegant in midnight blue silk that complemented her silver hair. Behind her followed 5 distinguished-looking individuals, the Harrington Foundation board members, exactly as promised. Naomi straightened her shoulders and moved forward to greet them, professional smile in place. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The perfect introduction. The perfect impression. She didn't see the chain of small disasters already set in motion. The waiter Brooke had spoken to was now balancing a tray of champagne flutes, looking slightly disoriented. He had been told there was an urgent need to serve the arriving VIPs immediately, a deviation from the carefully timed service Naomi had planned. As he hurried forward, another server stepped backward unexpectedly, causing him to sidestep quickly. The movement sent the champagne flutes sliding precariously on his tray. From across the room, Lucas Bennett noticed the impending disaster with the clarity that came from a lifetime of studying structural dynamics. His eyes tracked the trajectory of the tilting tray, the position of the approaching VIPs, and the oblivious path of Naomi heading straight into the danger zone. Time seemed to slow down as Naomi reached Margaret Wellington, hand extended in greeting. "Margaret, I'm so pleased you could." That's when several things happened at once. The waiter's tray finally lost its precarious balance. 12 champagne flutes began their inevitable descent. Margaret Wellington's eyes widened in alarm. And directly in the splash zone stood Edward Harrington, the notoriously particular chairman of the foundation board, wearing an impeccably white dinner jacket. Naomi turned just in time to see catastrophe hurtling toward her most important potential client. In that moment, every perfectionist nightmare she'd ever had paled in comparison to the reality unfolding before her. This wasn't just a small mistake. This was career suicide playing out in slow motion. She could already imagine tomorrow's gossip, how Naomi Jackson's incompetence had ruined Margaret Wellington's gala. How Edward Harrington had been humiliated. How Brooke Sullivan had been hired to handle all future Wellington events. From her vantage point across the room, Brooke watched with barely concealed satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly, a few whispered suggestions, a little confusion among the staff, and now Naomi would face the consequences. Nothing overtly malicious, just a nudge to an already pressured situation. Business was business, after all. What Brooke hadn't counted on was Lucas Bennett. In the 3 seconds between disaster's initiation and its expected impact, Lucas moved with decisive grace. Years of solving structural problems had trained his mind to find solutions where others saw only inevitable failure. He stepped forward, seemingly from nowhere, with a silver tray he'd smoothly lifted from a nearby empty serving station. With the precision of a man who calculated angles for a living, he positioned himself between the falling champagne and Edward Harrington. The champagne flutes crashed down, but instead of drenching the VIP guests, they landed on Lucas's intercepting tray, creating a dramatic splash that somehow, almost magically, looked intentional rather than disastrous. Droplets of champagne sparkled in the air like diamonds under the chandeliers. The sound of crystal meeting silver rang out like a toast bell. And Lucas, looking as though this moment had been planned all along, smiled charmingly at the startled group. "I believe," he said smoothly, "that champagne is best appreciated at eye level before being enjoyed. Don't you agree, Ms. Wellington?" There was a beat of stunned silence before Margaret Wellington's delighted laughter broke the tension. "Well played, young man," she said, eyes twinkling. "I don't believe we've met." As Lucas introduced himself to the group, Naomi stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Disaster had been averted, but not by her. Her perfect plan had nearly shattered, and a complete stranger had saved not just the moment but possibly her entire career. When Lucas's eyes finally met hers over Margaret Wellington's shoulder, something passed between them. An understanding, a connection, a shared secret. Neither of them could have known that this moment would be just the beginning. Across the room, Brooke Sullivan's smile had faded as she watched her perfect sabotage transform into something entirely unexpected. The evening was far from over, and things had just taken a very interesting turn. Have you ever had a moment where everything seemed to go wrong at once? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, give this video a thumbs up so others can find it too. Chapter 3. The moment seemed suspended in time. What should have been a catastrophe had somehow transformed into an elegant introduction. "Lucas Bennett," he said, extending his hand to Margaret Wellington while still perfectly balancing the tray of what remained of the champagne. "Bennett Architectural Design. I believe we met briefly at the hospital wing dedication last spring." Margaret's eyes lit with recognition. "Of course. You designed that remarkable healing garden." "Edward," she turned to the man in the white dinner jacket who had nearly been doused in champagne, "this is the architect I was telling you about. The one with the innovative approach to public spaces." Edward Harrington, still processing his narrow escape from social disaster, extended his hand somewhat dazedly. "Remarkable reflexes, Mr. Bennett." "Just lucky timing," Lucas replied modestly, though there had been nothing lucky about it. He had calculated the angles, anticipated the trajectory, and executed the perfect intervention, skills honed through years of solving spatial problems in 3 dimensions. What he couldn't explain was why he had acted so instinctively. Lucas typically observed social mishaps with detached sympathy, not active intervention. Yet something about the panic in Naomi's eyes as she'd spotted the impending disaster had compelled him to move. A waiter quickly appeared to take the dripping tray, and Lucas smoothly guided the conversation toward the Harrington Foundation's upcoming community center project. All the while, he was acutely aware of Naomi standing slightly to the side, her professional smile back in place but her eyes still wide with the aftershocks of what had nearly happened. "I must say," Margaret Wellington commented, "this is turning out to be quite the memorable evening. First that dramatic champagne rescue, and now I discover the perfect architect for our community center is already here." She turned to Naomi. "Your events always seem to create the most fortuitous connections, Ms. Jackson." Naomi stepped forward, her composure restored through sheer force of will. "That's always the goal, Margaret. Bringing the right people together in the right environment." She glanced at Lucas, a silent thank you in her eyes. "Though I can't take credit for Mr. Bennett's quick thinking. Sometimes the best moments at events are the unplanned ones," Lucas offered, watching color return to Naomi's face. He found himself unexpectedly captivated by her, the way she had so quickly regained her professional demeanor, the subtle strength in her stance, the intelligence in her dark eyes. "Indeed," agreed Edward Harrington, now fully recovered from his near-soaking. "I'd say Ms. Jackson's event has already proven successful for us. We've found our architect and been treated to a bit of impromptu entertainment." The group laughed, the tension of the moment completely dissipated. Naomi guided them toward the VIP seating area she had personally arranged, where the best view of the upcoming program awaited. As the group moved away, she lingered momentarily beside Lucas. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly, her voice carrying a depth of gratitude that went beyond professional courtesy. "That could have been an excellent icebreaker," Lucas suggested with a small smile. The unexpected humor startled a genuine laugh from her, a warm, rich sound that contrasted sharply with her controlled demeanor. "That's certainly one way to look at it. I'm guessing you prefer events to go according to plan," he said. "You could say planning is my religion," she admitted. "Though apparently I need to account for champagne-catching architects in future risk assessments." Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them, a recognition, perhaps, of something familiar in each other. Before either could pursue the conversation further, André appeared at Naomi's side. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, though his curious glance between them suggested he wasn't entirely sorry, "but the program is about to begin, and the technical team needs to confirm the lighting cues." "Of course," Naomi said, instantly switching back to event planner mode. She turned to Lucas. "Thank you again, Mr. Bennett." "Truly." "Lucas," he corrected. "Lucas," she repeated, and he found he liked the way his name sounded in her voice. "I'm Naomi Jackson." "I know," he replied simply, and watched as surprise flickered across her face before she was whisked away by the demands of her event. From across the room, Brooke Sullivan observed the exchange with calculating eyes. Her plan to undermine Naomi had not only failed but had seemingly created an opportunity for her rival. That simply wouldn't do. She smoothed her designer dress and began making her way toward Lucas, already formulating her approach. Meanwhile, Lucas found himself scanning the room, tracking Naomi's movements as she efficiently addressed one small crisis after another, a speaker with last-minute changes to their introduction, a lighting cue that needed adjustment, a guest requiring special assistance. He noticed how she anticipated needs before they were voiced, how she remained invisible to most guests while being precisely where she was needed. It reminded him of good architecture, the way the best design elements supported function so seamlessly that most people never noticed them. They simply experienced the space as it was intended to be experienced, unaware of the careful calculations that made it possible. When Brooke approached him moments later with a practiced smile and perfectly timed compliment about his firm's recent downtown project, Lucas responded politely but found his attention still drawn to Naomi across the room. There was something about her that intrigued him in a way he couldn't immediately identify, a quality that went beyond her obvious beauty or professional competence. Perhaps it was the glimpse of vulnerability he'd seen beneath her perfect facade. Or perhaps it was the way she'd looked at him with genuine gratitude rather than social calculation. Whatever it was, Lucas Bennett, who had attended countless events just like this one and left them all feeling precisely as empty as when he'd arrived, found himself unexpectedly invested in seeing how this particular evening would unfold. Chapter 4. The remainder of the gala unfolded with the seamless precision Naomi had planned, though she found it difficult to fully immerse herself in the familiar rhythm of managing the event. Her mind kept returning to the moment of near disaster and the enigmatic architect who had stepped in so effortlessly. By the time the last guest departed and the cleanup crew began their work, Naomi felt the familiar post-event exhaustion settling into her bones. She sat alone in a quiet corner of the now empty ballroom, heels off and clipboard finally set aside. "You should be celebrating," Andre said, dropping into the chair beside her and handing her a flute of the same champagne that had nearly derailed everything. The Harrington Foundation board members couldn't stop praising the event. "I overheard Edward telling Margaret they'd be foolish to consider anyone else for their series." Naomi sipped the champagne, allowing herself to finally acknowledge the weight that had lifted from her shoulders. "It was close, Andre. Too close. But it wasn't a disaster." He nudged her gently. "And I saw you talking to Champagne Man, tall, blue eyes, quick reflexes." "Lucas Bennett," she corrected automatically, then caught Andre's knowing smile. "He's an architect. And yes, he saved the entire evening. And based on how he kept looking for you afterward, I'd say he's interested in more than just event planning." Naomi rolled her eyes, but felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the champagne. "Don't start. You know I don't mix business with personal." "Because heaven forbid Naomi Jackson have an actual life outside of color-coded spreadsheets," Andre teased, though there was genuine concern beneath his words. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with an incoming text from an unknown number. "I hope it's not inappropriate to reach out," the message read, "but I wanted to make sure the rest of your event went as planned. Lucas Bennett." Naomi stared at the screen, a confusing mixture of professional caution and personal interest warring within her. "How did he get my number?" she asked aloud. Andre grinned. "I might have given it to him when he asked." "You're welcome." "Andre." "What?" "The man saved your career tonight. The least you could do is say thank you." And so, after returning home to her immaculate but somehow empty apartment, Naomi found herself composing a reply. "Not inappropriate at all. The event was a complete success, thanks in no small part to your quick thinking. I'm still not sure how to properly thank you." His response came quickly: coffee would be a start. "No pressure, though. I understand if you're too busy saving the social world from champagne disasters." Naomi surprised herself by smiling at her phone screen. There was something refreshingly direct about him. The next morning, they met at a small cafe halfway between his office and hers. Naomi arrived 10 minutes early, as was her habit, but found Lucas already there, 2 cups of coffee on the table before him. "I guessed black coffee," he said as she sat down. "You strike me as someone who doesn't have time for frills." "Good guess," she replied, taking the cup gratefully. Up close, in the daylight, Lucas Bennett was even more striking than she remembered, his features strong but kind, his eyes observant and intelligent. "I have a confession," he said after they had exchanged pleasantries. "I knew who you were before last night. Your reputation in the event planning world is pretty remarkable. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Should I be flattered or concerned that an architect keeps tabs on event planners? Flattered, I hope. My firm often collaborates on venue designs. Understanding how spaces will be used for events is part of our process. He paused, studying her face. But that's not why I asked you to coffee. No? No, he confirmed. I asked you to coffee because I've attended dozens of events like last night's, and I've never seen anyone work with the focus and care you showed. Even in crisis. You mean when I froze while champagne nearly ruined everything? She hadn't meant to be so candid, but something about his direct gaze made pretense seem pointless. I mean when you recovered so quickly that everyone but me thought it was part of the plan. His voice was warm with admiration. That kind of grace under pressure is rare. The conversation flowed with surprising ease after that. What Naomi had expected to be a quick thank you coffee stretched into an hour, then two. They discovered shared perspectives on the importance of details, the satisfaction of seeing a vision come to life, the pressure of responsibilities. What surprised her most was how comfortable she felt allowing glimpses of herself to show through her professional veneer. Mentioning her grandmother's influence, admitting her frustration with competitors like Brooke, even confessing her secret addiction to late-night reality baking shows when the pressure of perfection became too much. As they finally prepared to leave, Lucas hesitated. I have a charity foundation meeting next week. They're looking for an event planner for their annual fundraiser. Naomi smiled, already pulling out her business card. Flawless Affairs would be happy to submit a proposal. I'm sure they'd appreciate that, he said, taking the card. Then, with a directness that caught her off guard, but I was actually hoping to see you again in a capacity that doesn't involve either of our professional lives. Naomi found herself at a crossroads. The careful walls she had built between her personal and professional lives had served her well. Yet something about Lucas Bennett made her wonder what might happen if she allowed those walls to come down, just a little. Would you be able to let your guard down with someone who saw you at your most vulnerable moment? Or would that make you keep them at a distance? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to share this video with someone who loves a good love story. Chapter 5. Their first real date happened on a Tuesday evening, a deliberate choice on Naomi's part, as weekends were sacred in the event planning world. They had agreed on dinner at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a neighborhood far from the usual haunts of Seattle's social elite. No chance of running into clients, Naomi had explained when suggesting it. I can actually eat pasta without worrying about sauce stains becoming professional liabilities. Lucas had arrived early and found himself surprisingly nervous, an emotion he rarely experienced in social situations. He was accustomed to business dinners, networking events, and professional gatherings where every interaction had clear parameters. This was different. This was personal. When Naomi walked in, he almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the sleek, professional event planner in muted colors designed to blend into the background. Instead, she wore a vibrant blue dress that brought out the warmth in her brown skin and a smile that transformed her entire face. You look. He began, then found himself uncharacteristically at a loss for words. Different, she supplied, a hint of self-consciousness in her voice as she sat down. Yourself, he finished. You look like yourself. Something in his tone must have conveyed the depth of the compliment because her eyes softened in a way that made his heart beat faster. The waiter brought menus, but they barely glanced at them, too absorbed in conversation that flowed with surprising ease. What had started as polite exchange about their respective careers soon deepened into discussions about childhood dreams, favorite books, travel experiences, and family stories. My father always said buildings should feel inevitable, Lucas explained as their pasta dishes arrived. Like they couldn't possibly have been designed any other way, they simply had to exist exactly as they are. That's beautiful, Naomi said, genuinely moved. Does your father still practice architecture? A shadow passed over Lucas's face. He passed away when I was 15. Heart attack. Naomi reached across the table to briefly touch his hand, a gesture so natural that neither of them fully registered its significance until afterward. I'm sorry. He sounds like he was a remarkable man. He was, Lucas agreed, surprised at how easily he could speak of his father with her. What about your parents? Naomi twirled pasta around her fork, considering her answer. My mom worked cleaning houses my whole childhood. 3 jobs sometimes, to keep us afloat after my father left. She taught me about dignity in work, no matter what kind it is. She paused. And about how to be invisible when needed and memorable when necessary, a skill that served me well in event planning. And yet, Lucas observed, I noticed you immediately at the gala, even before the champagne incident. Color rose in Naomi's cheeks. That's not supposed to happen. Good event planners are practically ghosts. Maybe I was looking for something most people miss. The dinner stretched into dessert, and dessert into cups of coffee that grew cold as they lost track of time. When they finally left the restaurant, it was nearly midnight. I can't remember the last time I was out this late on a work night, Naomi confessed as they walked slowly toward her car. My 5 a.m. alarm is going to be painful. Worth it? Lucas asked, halting beneath the gentle glow of a street lamp. She looked up at him, her professional reserve completely dissolved. Definitely worth it. The kiss that followed wasn't planned. Not by Naomi, who planned everything, not by Lucas, who calculated each angle of his life with precision. It simply happened, as natural and inevitable as the buildings Lucas's father had described. In the weeks that followed, they carved out moments together between their demanding schedules. Lucas attended a small event Naomi was managing, watching from the sidelines as she orchestrated every detail with quiet authority. Naomi visited a building site where Lucas explained his vision for transforming an abandoned warehouse into affordable apartments with community spaces. Andre noted the change in his sister immediately. You're humming, he accused one morning as they prepared for a client meeting. You never hum. I have no idea what you're talking about, Naomi replied, but the smile that had become her constant companion betrayed her. It's been 3 weeks and you haven't made a single color-coded spreadsheet about him, Andre pressed. This must be serious. Naomi rolled her eyes, but the truth in his observation struck her. She hadn't analyzed her relationship with Lucas the way she approached everything else in her life, with careful planning and risk assessment. Instead, she had simply experienced it. The revelation was both exhilarating and terrifying. For Lucas, the change was equally profound. His mother noticed it immediately when they met for their weekly lunch. You seem lighter, Rebecca observed. Like you've set down a burden you've been carrying. Lucas considered this. I think I've met someone who sees me. Not what I can provide or what I can design or what I represent. Just me. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Your father would be so happy to hear that. The next significant moment in their relationship came unexpectedly, when Naomi was struggling with the concept for an important corporate anniversary event. The client wanted something innovative but not weird, impressive but not showy. Contradictory directions that had her staring blankly at her computer screen late one evening. Lucas had stopped by with takeout, finding her surrounded by crumpled sketches and looking uncharacteristically defeated. Talk me through it, he said, clearing space on her dining table turned workspace. What began as a vent session evolved into a collaborative brainstorming that lasted until 2 a.m. Lucas's architectural perspective blended with Naomi's event expertise, creating a concept that transcended what either could have developed alone. When the client enthusiastically approved their idea the next day, something shifted in their relationship. They weren't just two people enjoying each other's company, they were partners who brought out the best in each other. The night they celebrated the successful proposal was the night of their first kiss beyond a simple goodnight. In Lucas's minimalist but warm apartment, surrounded by architectural models and the remains of a home-cooked meal, Naomi felt the last of her carefully constructed walls finally come down. Chapter 6. Brooke Sullivan had built her career on knowing exactly how people perceived her. She curated her image with the precision of a museum curator, the right clothes, the right connections, the right amount of charm carefully dispensed to the right people. Which was why the change in dynamics between Naomi Jackson and the architect from the Wellington Gala had not escaped her notice. They'd been seeing each other, her assistant confirmed after Brooke had casually inquired. Apparently it's getting serious. Brooke twirled a pen between her manicured fingers, considering this development. Business had been especially competitive lately, with Naomi's company securing several clients that Brooke had considered guaranteed for her own firm. The Harrington Foundation contract alone represented a significant financial loss. Interesting, was all she said aloud, but her mind was already calculating angles and opportunities. She had never considered Naomi Jackson a serious threat until recently. The woman was talented but too rigid, too controlled to connect with clients on a personal level. At least, that had been Brooke's assessment. But lately, something had changed. Naomi's presentations had a new creative edge. Her pitches showed a flexibility previously lacking. Clients were responding enthusiastically to this evolution. And Brooke knew exactly who to blame. Lucas Bennett. The architect who had not only thwarted her carefully engineered champagne disaster but was now apparently inspiring Naomi to new heights professionally. This simply wouldn't do. The Seattle Design Excellence Award ceremony provided the perfect opportunity. As a rising star in architectural circles, Lucas would certainly be attending. And as a member of the planning committee, Brooke had ensured her own invitation. She arrived in a strategically chosen red dress that commanded attention without seeming to try too hard. Lucas was there, as expected, deep in conversation with a group of fellow architects. No sign of Naomi, which was perfect. Lucas Bennett, she said warmly, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Brooke Sullivan. She offered him a glass. Though I believe you're more accustomed to catching champagne than drinking it. Lucas accepted the glass with a polite smile. Ms. Sullivan. Naomi has mentioned you. All good things, I hope, Brooke laughed, the sound practiced to perfection. Though I doubt that's the case. Our industry can be rather competitive. Competition can drive innovation, Lucas replied diplomatically. Indeed, Brooke agreed, taking a calculated sip of her champagne. And speaking of innovation, I've been following your work. The community spaces in the lakeside development are particularly impressive. Lucas's expression warmed at the mention of his work. Thank you. The goal was to create gathering spaces that feel both intimate and expansive. You succeeded brilliantly. Brooke moved slightly closer. I'd love to pick your brain about a project I'm working on. We're planning an immersive gala experience, and the spatial elements are crucial. The conversation flowed easily from there, with Brooke carefully steering it toward areas where she knew her expertise would shine. She mentioned mutual acquaintances, referenced industry trends, and dropped subtle hints about her connections to projects that would interest an architect of Lucas's caliber. The challenge, she explained, leaning slightly closer than necessary, is creating an environment that guides guests through an experience without them feeling manipulated. The best design does exactly that, Lucas agreed. It shapes behavior without imposing it. Precisely. Brooke touched his arm briefly, a gesture calculated to suggest professional excitement rather than flirtation. That's exactly what I've been trying to explain to my team. What she didn't know was that Naomi had just entered the venue, immediately spotting Lucas in conversation with her rival. The sight stopped her momentarily, Brooke's hand on Lucas's arm, their heads close together in what appeared to be intimate conversation. Naomi pushed away the instinctive flare of jealousy. Lucas had mentioned he would be at the award ceremony, and she had decided to surprise him by attending despite her packed schedule. Now she hesitated, watching the interaction with professional detachment, or attempting to. By the time she approached them, Brooke was showing Lucas something on her phone, their shoulders nearly touching. Naomi. Brooke's surprise seemed genuine, though her eyes glinted with something less innocent. We were just discussing the Harrison Foundation project. Lucas has some fascinating insights about experiential design. I'm sure he does, Naomi replied evenly, accepting the kiss Lucas placed on her cheek. He's quite brilliant at seeing potential where others miss it. The subtle territorial claim wasn't lost on Brooke. Indeed. We've been having such an enlightening conversation. Lucas mentioned you've been helping him with some community outreach for his latest project? The implication was clear, that Naomi was merely assisting, not collaborating as an equal. Before Lucas could correct her, Brooke continued smoothly. It's so refreshing to see someone from the event world taking an interest in the architectural side. Most event planners just want pretty backdrops without understanding the structural elements. Naomi has an exceptional eye for how people move through space, Lucas countered, his hand finding the small of Naomi's back. Her insights have been invaluable. Brooke's smile remained fixed, but something flickered in her eyes. How wonderful. Though I imagine it must be challenging to maintain professional objectivity when working with someone you're involved with. The comment hung in the air like a perfectly placed landmine. Actually, Naomi replied coolly, our professional respect for each other existed before any personal connection. It's the foundation of both relationships. Of course, Brooke conceded with a gracious nod that somehow still conveyed doubt. Well, I should circulate. Lucas, don't forget about that project I mentioned. I'd love to have your input, strictly professional, of course. As she glided away, Naomi felt a familiar tension settle between her shoulders. She's good at what she does, she murmured. Which is? Lucas asked, still watching Brooke's retreating figure with a furrowed brow. Creating doubt, Naomi replied. It's her specialty. The interaction should have ended there, a brief, uncomfortable moment quickly forgotten. But over the following weeks, Brooke's strategic campaign began to take effect. At industry gatherings, whispers circulated about how Naomi Jackson had needed rescuing at the Wellington Gala. How she was sleeping her way into architectural contracts. How her recent successes were really Lucas Bennett's ideas. Most damaging were the subtle questions raised to potential clients about whether Naomi could be trusted to perform under pressure without her knight in shining armor stepping in to save the day. The rumors were particularly effective because they contained just enough truth to sting. The champagne incident had happened. Lucas had intervened. They were in a relationship. These facts, skillfully twisted and whispered in the right ears, began to cast a shadow over Naomi's hard-won professional reputation. When a major client cited concerns about self-sufficiency in choosing Brooke's company over flawless affairs, Naomi knew exactly who was responsible. Chapter 7. The annual Innovation in Design Conference was the most prestigious gathering of its kind in the Pacific Northwest, a 3-day event where architects, designers, urban planners, and event specialists converged to showcase their most groundbreaking work. This year, both Lucas and Naomi had reasons to attend, though neither had initially planned to make it a joint appearance. Lucas's firm was unveiling their concept for a revolutionary community art center, a project close to his heart that incorporated many of the ideas he and Naomi had discussed during their late-night conversations. Naomi was there representing Flawless Affairs, which had been shortlisted for an Event Innovation Award despite the recent whispers undermining her reputation. They had arrived separately due to conflicting morning schedules, planning to reconnect during the afternoon sessions. What neither anticipated was Brooke Sullivan's meticulous planning. Naomi was making her way through the main exhibition hall when she overheard Lucas's voice coming from a semi-private meeting area. She paused, not wanting to interrupt if he was in a professional conversation, but close enough to hear. The challenge with Naomi's approach, Lucas was saying, his tone thoughtful, is that she sometimes focuses so much on perfection that she misses opportunities for organic moments. There's a rigidity there that can be limiting. Naomi froze, the words hitting like a physical blow. She couldn't see who Lucas was speaking with, but the content of the conversation was clear enough. "So you agree there are significant weaknesses in her methodology," came Brooke's unmistakable voice, silky with false concern. "I wouldn't call them weaknesses," Lucas replied. "More like areas where a different perspective can be valuable. That's why our collaboration works." But ultimately, Brooke interrupted smoothly, "When high-pressure situations arise, someone with a more flexible approach would be better equipped to handle unexpected challenges. Someone who doesn't need rescuing when things go sideways." There was a pause before Lucas responded, and in that moment, Naomi made a choice. Rather than staying to hear his defense, if indeed he was defending her, she turned and walked away, the conversation confirming her deepest insecurities. The very qualities she had prided herself on, her attention to detail, her careful planning, her focus on flawless execution, were apparently seen as weaknesses by the man she had allowed herself to trust professionally and personally. What she couldn't have known was that Lucas had been cornered by Brooke moments before, ostensibly to discuss a genuine collaboration opportunity. Brooke had skillfully steered the conversation toward Naomi only after establishing a context that made Lucas believe they were discussing theoretical approaches to event design, not specific criticism of Naomi herself. By the time Lucas realized Brooke's agenda, the damage was done. He had unintentionally provided her with more ammunition, and worse, had never finished his thought about how Naomi's precision complemented his adaptability, creating something stronger than either could achieve alone. When Lucas finally found Naomi nearly 2 hours later, her demeanor had changed completely. The warm, increasingly open woman he had come to care for deeply had been replaced by the pristine professional he had first glimpsed at the Wellington Gala, polished, distant, and utterly unreachable. "There you are," he said, relieved to have found her in the crowded convention center. "I've been looking everywhere." "I've been networking," she replied, her voice pleasant but cool. "There are potential clients here who still need to be convinced that I can handle an event without requiring a rescue operation." Lucas blinked, taken aback by her tone. "What are you talking about?" "It doesn't matter," she said, glancing at her watch. "I have to prepare for the panel discussion. Will you be attending, or do you have more important conversations about my professional shortcomings to finish?" Understanding dawned on Lucas's face. "You overheard my conversation with Brooke." "Enough of it," Naomi confirmed, maintaining her composure even as her eyes betrayed her hurt. "It's fine, Lucas. Everyone's entitled to their professional opinion." "That's not what, Naomi, you didn't hear the whole conversation." Brooke was deliberately. "Deliberately what?" "Asking your honest opinion. Because what I heard sounded pretty honest to me." The professional veneer cracked slightly, allowing a glimpse of the raw pain beneath. "My rigidity. My obsession with perfection. How I need rescuing when things go wrong." Lucas ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "That's not what I meant at all. Brooke twisted everything I said. She took it completely out of context." "Did she put the words in your mouth?" Naomi challenged, her voice lowered but intense. "Or did she just provide a convenient opportunity for you to express what you really think?" Around them, conference attendees moved through the hall, oblivious to the quiet crisis unfolding in their midst. Lucas reached for Naomi's hand, but she stepped back. "I have to go," she said. "My panel starts in 15 minutes, and unlike some people seem to believe, I take my professional commitment seriously." "Naomi, please. We need to talk about this. I think you've said enough." The panel discussion on creating memorable experiences through environmental design should have been a perfect showcase for Naomi's expertise. Instead, it became an exercise in professional survival as she forced herself to focus despite the emotional turmoil threatening to overwhelm her. When the moderator asked about handling unexpected challenges during events, Naomi felt every eye on her, wondering, perhaps, if she would reference the now infamous champagne incident. The key, she said with practiced calm, is extensive contingency planning. While some might view thorough preparation as rigidity, professionals understand that it's actually what allows for genuine flexibility when unexpected situations arise. From the back of the room, she could see Lucas watching her, his expression troubled. Beside him stood Brooke, a subtle smile playing at her lips. The final breaking point came at the evening reception. Lucas had spent the intervening hours trying to speak with Naomi alone, but she had skillfully avoided any private conversation, surrounding herself with colleagues and potential clients. When he finally managed to corner her near the bar, his frustration had reached its limit. "You're not even giving me a chance to explain," he said quietly. "That's not fair, Naomi." "Fair?" she repeated, keeping her voice low despite her rising emotion. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that after years of building my reputation, it's being dismantled because people see me as someone who needed a man to step in and save the day? Is it fair that clients are now questioning my competence because of rumors started by Brooke Sullivan, rumors that you just provided supporting evidence for?" "That's not what happened," Lucas insisted. "I was talking about how our different approaches complement each other. How together we're stronger than apart. I don't need you to rescue me or fix things." The words burst from her with unexpected force. "Not at the gala, not in my business, not ever. I was handling my career just fine before you came along." "This isn't about rescuing," Lucas countered, his own control slipping. "This is about partnership. But you're so afraid of appearing vulnerable that you can't even see the difference. And you're so used to being the reliable one, the one who fixes everything, that you can't understand why that might be a problem for me professionally." Their voices had risen slightly, attracting glances from nearby attendees. Naomi took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. "I think we need to take a step back," she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Clearly, we have different views on what this relationship is. Naomi, I have worked too hard, for too long, to have my professional identity subsumed into being the event planner who needed saving. I can't do this, Lucas. Not now. Maybe not ever." With those words, she walked away, head high despite the tears threatening to spill over. Lucas stood motionless, watching her go, the crowded reception suddenly feeling empty. From across the room, Brooke Sullivan observed the scene with quiet satisfaction. Division accomplished. Have you ever had a misunderstanding spiral into something bigger than it should have been? What happened? Share your story below and remember to subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Chapter 8. The week following the conference passed in a blur of activity for Naomi. She threw herself into work with renewed fervor, scheduling client meetings back-to-back, refining proposals until 3 a.m., and checking emails compulsively. On the surface, she was the epitome of professional dedication. Beneath that carefully maintained facade, she was falling apart. "You can't keep this up," Andre said on the 7th consecutive night of finding her still at the office well past midnight. He set down a container of takeout that would likely go untouched, just like the others. "This isn't about work. This is about avoiding feelings." "I have deadlines," Naomi replied without looking up from her computer. "The Richardson wedding is in 3 weeks, and the Callaway corporate retreat needs." "Lucas called me," Andre interrupted. That got her attention. She looked up, dark circles visible beneath her eyes despite her careful makeup. "Why would he call you?" "Because you won't answer his calls or texts. He's worried about you." Andre pulled up a chair, sitting directly in her line of sight. "He told me what happened at the conference." "Did he tell you how he discussed my professional weaknesses with Brooke Sullivan? How he thinks I'm too rigid and need rescuing?" The words came out sharper than intended, the pain still fresh. He told me that Brooke manipulated the situation and that you heard a fragment of conversation taken completely out of context. Andre's voice was gentle but firm. He also said you wouldn't let him explain. Naomi turned back to her computer. There's nothing to explain. Isn't there? Andre reached over and closed her laptop. Nye, I've watched you build walls around yourself for years. Triple-checking everything, never allowing a single mistake, never letting anyone see anything but perfection. When was the last time you felt truly free to just be? The question hung in the air, uncomfortably close to truths Naomi had been avoiding. With him, she admitted finally, so quietly Andre almost missed it. With Lucas. And that scares you more than any professional setback could. She didn't respond, but the tears that finally spilled over were answer enough. Across town, Lucas sat in his darkened home office, staring at the models for his community arts center. The project that had once filled him with excitement now felt hollow. He kept replaying the conversation with Brooke, seeing all the warning signs he'd missed, the careful way she'd led him into saying exactly what she needed to cause maximum damage. His phone rang, and for a moment hope flared that it might be Naomi. Instead, his mother's name appeared on the screen. "You sound terrible," Rebecca said after he answered. "Thanks, Mom. Just what I needed to hear." "What you need to hear and what you want to hear are often different things," she replied. "I ran into Margaret Wellington at the grocery store today. She mentioned there's trouble between you and Naomi Jackson." Lucas sighed. News traveled fast in certain circles. "It's complicated. Love usually is," Rebecca said. "Your father and I had our share of misunderstandings, especially in the beginning. He was so focused on his work, so driven to succeed." "Like Naomi," Lucas murmured. "Like both of you," Rebecca corrected gently. "You've always been the reliable one, Lucas. The one who steps in and fixes things. The one who carries others' burdens. But sometimes people don't need fixing. Sometimes they just need someone to stand beside them while they fix themselves." The word struck a chord. "I was trying to help." "Of course you were," his mother agreed. "But for someone who has fought as hard as Naomi has for professional recognition, help can feel like a statement that she's not capable on her own." Lucas rubbed his eyes, exhaustion settling deep in his bones. "So what do I do?" "First, you need to ask yourself an important question," Rebecca said. "Are you pursuing her because you want to fix her life, or because you genuinely believe your lives are better together than apart?" The answer came without hesitation: together. Definitely together. Then you need to show her that, not by solving her problems, but by respecting her ability to solve them herself. As days turned into weeks, both Naomi and Lucas went through the motions of their professional lives while privately confronting truths about themselves they had long avoided. For Naomi, it was the realization that her pursuit of perfection had become a prison. What had begun as a necessary strategy for success as a black woman in a competitive industry had evolved into a barrier that kept everyone at a distance, except Lucas, who had somehow slipped past her defenses. "I've been so afraid of being seen as weak that I forgot how to be human," she confessed to Andre one evening, finally untouched work files spread around her apartment. "I was more upset about Lucas seeing me vulnerable than I was about the actual champagne incident." "Vulnerability isn't weakness," Andre reminded her. "It's courage." "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because you're out of practice," he said, putting an arm around her shoulders. "And because it matters." For Lucas, the revelation was equally profound. His instinct to step in and fix situations had come from watching his mother struggle after his father's death, from the teenage boy's promise to never let someone he cared about face difficulties alone. But in always being the solution, he had sometimes failed to simply be present. "I didn't listen," he admitted to his mother during their weekly lunch. "I was so focused on fixing the situation that I didn't hear what she was really saying." Which was that she needed to be seen as capable and strong, especially by me. Lucas pushed his plate away, appetite gone. I thought I was supporting her, but sometimes I was undermining her without realizing it. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, when Naomi discovered an email accidentally forwarded to her by a mutual client, a conversation between Brooke and a potential client where Brooke had explicitly referenced reliable sources, confirming Naomi's dependency issues and inability to handle pressure. The evidence of deliberate sabotage was irrefutable. And in that moment, Naomi realized she had allowed Brooke's manipulations to cost her something far more valuable than any client contract. Chapter 9. The Seattle Excellence in Business Awards was an annual event that recognized outstanding achievements across industries. This year, both Naomi and Lucas found themselves nominated, Naomi for Innovative Event Design and Lucas for Architectural Community Impact. Neither had initially planned to attend, the wounds of their separation still too fresh. But professional obligations have a way of forcing confrontations that personal courage might avoid. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel gleamed with subtle elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in midnight blue, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights reflecting off Elliott Bay. Under different circumstances, Naomi would have appreciated the design details, perhaps even made mental notes for future events. Tonight, she simply focused on breathing steadily as she made her way through the crowd. Lucas arrived minutes after the ceremony began, slipping quietly into his assigned seat at a table near the back. He hadn't expected to see Naomi until the awards presentation, but fate had other plans. During the appetizer course, he glanced up to find her at the adjacent table, less than 15 feet away. Their eyes met briefly before both looked away, the connection simultaneously electric and painful. The evening progressed through dinner and preliminary acknowledgments. When the Innovative Event Design category was announced, Lucas found himself holding his breath. The presenter read the nominees, and then. And the winner is Naomi Jackson of Flawless Affairs. Applause filled the room as Naomi made her way to the stage, the epitome of professional grace in a deep purple gown that caught the light with each step. She accepted the award with a composed smile, adjusting the microphone to her height. "Thank you," she began, her voice clear and steady. "This recognition means more than I can express, especially after a year that has challenged me both professionally and personally." She paused, her eyes scanning the room before continuing. "Events are ultimately about human connection. Creating spaces where people can authentically engage with one another, where memories are formed and relationships are strengthened. But ironically, those of us who create these spaces often remain behind the scenes, invisible by design and sometimes isolated by choice." Lucas watched, transfixed, as Naomi seemed to shed layers of her professional armor with each word. "I've recently learned that perfection isn't always perfect. That sometimes our most valuable contributions come not from flawless execution but from genuine vulnerability. From allowing ourselves to be seen, really seen, by others." Her eyes found his in the crowd, the connection unmistakable now. "I want to thank my brother Andre for keeping me grounded, my team for their extraordinary dedication, and someone who taught me that sometimes the most perfect moments happen when we least expect them. Lucas Bennett showed me that when our carefully constructed facades crumble, they make space for something far more beautiful to enter." The acknowledgement sent a ripple of whispers through the audience as pieces of industry gossip suddenly gained new context. Lucas sat motionless, hardly daring to breathe. "Thank you again for this honor," Naomi concluded. "I promise to continue creating experiences that bring people together, not despite our imperfections, but embracing them as part of what makes us human." The applause that followed her off the stage was enthusiastic, but Lucas barely registered it. He was already calculating the most direct path to intercept her as she returned to her table. He found her in a quiet corridor just outside the ballroom, still holding her award, looking somehow both triumphant and vulnerable. "That was quite a speech," he said softly, maintaining a respectful distance. "I meant every word." She took a step toward him. "I found the email, Lucas." The one where Brooke was deliberately spreading rumors about me. I should have trusted you enough to listen to your explanation. And I should have been more aware of how my actions might affect your professional standing, he countered. I was so focused on helping that I didn't consider how it might look to others, or how it might make you feel. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the continuing ceremony muffled behind closed doors. I've missed you, Naomi admitted finally. More than I thought possible. I've missed you too, Lucas replied, closing the distance between them slightly. My mom says I've been impossible to be around. Apparently I've checked and rechecked the community center plans so many times my team threatened to quit. A smile tugged at Naomi's lips. Sounds familiar. Andre says I've been micromanaging my staff into rebellion. They both laughed softly, the tension between them finally beginning to ease. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Lucas said, his eyes softening. Both so afraid of making mistakes that we ended up making the biggest one of all. Naomi nodded, setting her award down on a nearby table. I was terrified that if I let you see the real me, all of me, including the parts that aren't perfectly put together, you'd think less of me. I was afraid I couldn't be what you needed, Lucas admitted. That I'd never measure up to the standards you set for yourself. I was afraid of being seen as weak, Naomi said, her voice barely above a whisper. In an industry that already questions whether I belong, I couldn't bear the thought of giving anyone ammunition against me. Lucas took another step forward, now close enough that he could reach for her hand if he dared. Being vulnerable isn't weakness, Naomi. What you did tonight on that stage? That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. It's easier to be brave when you have something worth fighting for, she replied, her eyes meeting his directly now. I've spent my whole career creating perfect moments for other people. I don't want to miss out on my own anymore. From behind the ballroom doors, they could hear the announcement for the Architectural Community Impact Award. Lucas didn't move. Don't you want to know if you won? Naomi asked, gesturing toward the doors. Lucas shook his head. I already have what I came for. He finally reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I don't want to fix things for you, Naomi. I just want to stand beside you, through the disasters and the triumphs. And I don't want to shut you out anymore, she replied, squeezing his hand. I want to build something together that's stronger than either of us could create alone. As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened, and a small crowd emerged into the corridor, including a photographer who quickly captured the moment. The event planner and the architect, hand in hand, both looking at each other as though they were seeing clearly for the first time. In the background, Brooke Sullivan paused at the sight of them, her expression shifting from surprise to something like grudging respect before she turned and walked away. So what now? Lucas asked, his thumb tracing circles on the back of Naomi's hand. Now, she said with newfound certainty, we stop trying to be perfect and start being real instead. As they walked back into the ballroom together, neither of them noticed when Lucas's name was announced as the winner of his category. Some victories, they were discovering, matter far more than any award. Chapter 10. 6 months later, the sign outside the renovated warehouse space in Seattle's Georgetown district read, Jackson Bennett Design Collective, where space meets experience. Inside, the industrial chic office hummed with creative energy, architects and event planners working side by side, seamlessly blending spatial design with experiential innovation. What do you think about moving the meditation garden to the east side? Lucas asked, leaning over a set of blueprints for their latest project, a corporate retreat center focused on wellness and creative thinking. The morning light would filter through those Japanese maples beautifully during the sunrise yoga sessions. Naomi considered the suggestion, her finger tracing the proposed pathway. I love that. And we could repurpose the western courtyard for the evening receptions. The sunset views would be spectacular, especially with those hanging installations we discussed. What had begun as a tentative professional collaboration had blossomed into something the industry hadn't seen before, a revolutionary approach that merged architectural vision with event expertise from the ground up. Rather than spaces being designed and then adapted for events later, their projects were conceived holistically from the start. "Have you seen the latest write-up in Design Quarterly?" Andre asked, dropping a magazine on Naomi's desk as he entered with coffee for all three of them. "Jackson Bennett Collective is redefining how we think about event spaces," he read aloud. "Their integrated approach challenges the conventional wisdom that form follows function, suggesting instead that form and function should dance together from conception." Lucas accepted his coffee with a grateful nod. "Dancing together. I like that metaphor." Speaking of dancing, Andre continued with a knowing smile, "Mom wants to know if you two are coming to Sunday dinner. She's making her famous jerk chicken." "Wouldn't miss it," Naomi replied, her eyes meeting Lucas's warmly. The professional partnership wasn't the only thing flourishing, their relationship had deepened in ways neither had anticipated. Working together had taught them to communicate more effectively, to respect each other's expertise, and to recognize that vulnerability could be a strength rather than a liability. Later that afternoon, as Lucas was finalizing some renderings, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway of the office. "Brooke," Naomi said, surprised to see her former rival standing there, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Can I help you with something?" Brooke Sullivan stepped inside, her gaze taking in the dynamic workspace with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. "I heard about what you're doing here. The Clemson Center project is impressive." The compliment seemed to cost her something, but she continued nonetheless. "I'm bidding on the Henderson Foundation Gala, and they specifically mentioned your work as a reference point." Lucas watched the interaction carefully, ready to intervene if needed, but Naomi remained composed and professional. "That's quite a project," Naomi acknowledged. "Their sustainability focus would make for an interesting design challenge." Brooke nodded. "That's actually why I'm here. I was wondering if the collective might be interested in a collaboration." She glanced between Naomi and Lucas. "Your approach to integrating sustainable materials without sacrificing elegance is something my team could learn from." The proposal hung in the air for a moment. 6 months ago, Naomi might have dismissed it outright, too protective of her hard-won success to share it with someone who had once tried to undermine her. But growth had happened on both sides of this equation. "Why don't you join us for coffee tomorrow morning?" Naomi suggested. "We can discuss possibilities." After Brooke left, Lucas raised an eyebrow. "That was unexpected." "People can surprise you," Naomi replied with a small smile. "I've learned that sometimes the most beautiful designs emerge from the most challenging constraints." That evening, as they walked along the waterfront after work, Lucas marveled at how far they'd come. "Remember when you wouldn't let anyone help you carry even a single box at events?" Naomi laughed, the sound carrying on the light breeze. "Now I have an entire team I trust completely. Including a certain architect who insists on double-checking my load-bearing calculations." "Only because you quadruple-check my lighting plans," he countered good-naturedly. The truth was, they had each grown in ways that extended far beyond their professional skills. Naomi had learned that accepting help wasn't an admission of weakness but a recognition of human connection. Lucas had discovered that supporting someone didn't always mean solving their problems, sometimes it meant simply standing witness to their struggles and celebrating their triumphs. Later that week, they presented their concept for an innovative cultural center to a panel of community leaders. When a question arose about potential accessibility issues, Lucas deferred to Naomi's expertise rather than jumping in with solutions. And when concerns were raised about the event scheduling logistics, Naomi confidently addressed them while acknowledging Lucas's contributions to the overall design. Their presentation earned a standing ovation. "We did it," Naomi whispered as they gathered their materials afterward. "We're just getting started," Lucas replied, his eyes bright with the promise of all they would build together, spaces and memories alike. Chapter 11. 1 year to the day after that fateful gala where champagne nearly ruined everything, Lucas stood in the center of his most personal project yet, a stunning rooftop garden overlooking the Seattle skyline. The space was a testament to everything he and Naomi had learned together, beautiful yet functional, elegant yet welcoming, thoughtfully designed yet open to spontaneous moments of joy. String lights twinkled overhead, weaving through custom pergolas that framed breathtaking views of the Sound. Natural wooden benches curved around intimate conversation nooks, while a small fountain provided gentle background music. Every detail had been planned with meticulous care, yet the space felt effortless. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" Andre asked, adjusting the arrangement of candles that lined the path. "Positive," Lucas replied, checking his watch. "She thinks we're meeting clients for a potential destination wedding venue. Her assistant is bringing her up in exactly 12 minutes. Rebecca Bennett arrived carrying a small vintage wooden box. "I brought it, just like you asked." She handed it to her son, her eyes glistening. "Your father would be so proud of the man you've become, Lucas." He accepted the box with reverence, opening it to reveal a platinum ring with an emerald center stone surrounded by small diamonds, his grandmother's engagement ring that had been passed down through generations. "Naomi will love it," Rebecca assured him, straightening his collar with maternal affection. "Not because it's perfect, but because it carries history and meaning." As the elevator chimed its arrival, Andre and Rebecca quickly made themselves scarce, disappearing into the clever hideaway Lucas had specifically designed into the space for this moment. The doors opened, and Naomi stepped out, stopped short by the unexpected beauty before her. Gone was her assistant. Instead, the rooftop garden bloomed with life and promise. "Lucas," she called, confusion giving way to wonder as she took in the scene. "What is all this?" He moved toward her, his heart pounding but his steps steady. "This is the space I've been working on for the past 3 months. The secret project. It's breathtaking," she whispered, trailing her fingers along a railing adorned with cascading jasmine. "But I don't understand. There's no client, is there?" "There is," he said with a smile. "Me. Or rather, us." Understanding dawned in her eyes as he took her hand and led her to the center of the garden, where a mosaic tile design spiraled beneath their feet, the same pattern from the gala floor where they'd first locked eyes. "1 year ago today," Lucas began, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I watched a brilliant, determined woman almost have her perfect night ruined. I had no idea that stepping in at that moment would change my life forever." Naomi's free hand went to her mouth as she realized what was happening. "You taught me that real connection isn't about rescuing someone or fixing their problems," he continued. "It's about seeing them, fully seeing them, and still choosing them every day." He dropped to one knee, opening the wooden box to reveal the emerald ring. "Naomi Jackson, you've shown me that imperfect moments can lead to perfect love. Will you marry me?" For once in her life, Naomi was completely unprepared. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was clear and certain. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, applause erupted from the hidden alcove, and Andre and Rebecca emerged, followed by a small group of their closest friends and family. "Did you know about this?" Naomi asked her brother, laughing through happy tears. "I may have helped with a few details," Andre admitted, pulling her into a hug. "Someone had to make sure the lighting was perfect for the photos." Rebecca embraced Naomi warmly. "Welcome to the family, officially," she said. "Though you've been part of it in my heart for months already." As glasses of champagne were distributed, carefully, with knowing smiles between the newly engaged couple, Lucas raised his in a toast. "To unexpected beginnings," he said, his eyes never leaving Naomi's. "And to embracing the beautiful mess of life together," she added, touching her glass to his. Later, as they slow danced under the stars, Naomi rested her head against Lucas's chest. "Do you think we would have found each other without that disaster at the gala?" "I'd like to think so," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Some connections are simply meant to be, perfect timing or not. I used to think I needed to plan every detail to ensure success, she murmured. Now I realize some of the best things in life can't be scheduled or organized. Like falling in love with your rescuer, he teased gently. She laughed, the sound floating up toward the night sky. Like finding your perfect match in the most imperfect moment. Around them, the garden Lucas had designed, their garden now, flourished in the evening breeze, a living testament to what they would continue to build together.